New Jersey winter wore the color of a tired sleeve the afternoon my life decided to measure me. The sky pressed low over the row houses, and the air carried that thin metallic taste you get when snow thinks about arriving but changes its mind. I had just finished a double shift on pediatric, and my scrubs felt like armor that had been asked to hold one fight too many. Eli slept in his booster seat with a paper crown half bent on his head from a class activity about kindness. He snored in little whistles, and the sound steadied my hands on the wheel. Home was 15 minutes away. I counted streetlights and listed the jobs I would do in order. Heat up soup, check Eli math sheet, wash lunch containers, lay out clothes, small work that keeps a roof loyal. I turned onto our block and saw a new shine sitting in the porch light. The shine had the look of a thing that wants to announce itself. A brass cylinder in the middle of our front door, clean against old paint. The kind of clean that tells you a stranger has been touching what belongs to you. The key on my ring met the lock and argued like two people who refused to share a table. I tried again. The teeth slid and caught against nothing. The door did not give. I felt my face cool first, then my hands. I knocked with the part of my knuckle that knows this wood. The porch light stayed steady. The curtains stayed still. Eli stirred and asked if we were home. I said yes because I wanted that to be true, and because children deserve the simplest version of a complicated hour. I walked him around to the back gate with the small chain that always sticks in damp weather. The chain slid clean. Someone had oiled it. The gate opened too easily. The back door refused me just like the front. I stood with my breath fogging and listened to a silence that had learned to lie. Our doorbell camera watched me without blinking. The cheap winter grass on the path leaned like a crowd that wanted to see a spectacle and would settle for anything. My phone lit up with a message from Dylan. Short sentences stacked like a wall. You cannot bring Eli into this house until you accept the plan. We are moving in with my parents. You will respect the rules of this family or find somewhere else. Your key has been disabled for your own good. Call me when you are ready to be reasonable. There was a second message from Marion at nearly the same time. She wrote about standards and heritage and the danger of permissive mothering. She wrote that the house needs a woman who understands order. She wrote that Eli must learn to obey his elders under their roof. She closed with words that read like a prayer spoken by a person who likes hearing herself pray. I called Dylan. The call went to voicemail after one ring. I called again, and the phone sent me to the same dull, pre-recorded smile. I texted slowly to keep from slipping under the rush. Illegal lockout is not a conversation. It is a crime. I have just arrived. Eli and I are outside. I am calling the police to file a report and a landlord-tenant complaint. Do not touch any of my property. I will also request a welfare check for you and your parents because I cannot imagine you making this choice in a calm state of mind. I hit send and looked at the door that used to understand me. Eli shivered, so I buckled him back into the car, turned the heat up, and called non-emergency. The dispatcher sounded like someone who has seen 100 versions of the same bad scene. She asked about our lease, about the deed, about names on the mail, about who paid the utilities, about standing orders at family court, about whether there had been threats. I answered with nouns and dates and the kind of calm that comes from spending nights holding crying parents together beside small hospital beds. She said an officer would meet me and that I could wait in the car with the child. She told me to keep the engine running and the doors locked. She said she was sorry. She sounded like a person who saves her softness for her own kitchen after midnight. While we waited, I scrolled through our doorbell app. The afternoon showed a clip I had not seen before. Marion, in her long wool coat, stepped onto our porch with a locksmith and pointed at the door like a judge pointing at a guilty man. Dylan stood behind her with his hands in his pockets and his chin tucked down the way he does when he is burying a feeling. The locksmith worked fast. The brass cylinder slid into place, and the old key looked dumb and small on the mat where Marion had placed it face up, like a coin offered to a god that loves obedience. I downloaded the clip and mailed it to myself, and to a fresh folder I labeled plainly, evidence. I have learned to love plain labels. They do not get creative in the dark. Officer Reyes arrived with another officer who stood back and let him carry the moment. Reyes looked like a person who could hold many kinds of silence at the same time and not break. He took my statement under the yellow porch light while Eli played with the loose thread on his glove. Reyes knocked and asked for Dylan by first and last name. Dylan opened the door halfway and told the officer that this was a private family matter and that he was protecting his son from instability. Reyes explained that lockouts are handled with rules, not opinions, and that if the house was in Dylan parents' names, we would still need a court to decide who could be here and when, and that a 6-year-old outside in the cold is the opposite of protection. He asked to see identification and mail and any court orders. Dylan did not have orders. He had insistence. Reyes wrote notes and said more people would call us in the morning. He suggested I go somewhere safe for the night. He asked if I had a place. I nodded. He looked at me with the kind of respect that does not perform. I felt taller by half an inch. We drove to my friend Nina's small apartment. Nina is a nurse too and keeps a fold-out couch that has saved many people more than once. She met us in socks and a sweater that had seen better days and hugged me with careful arms so Eli would not feel squeezed out. She made him hot chocolate and me tea, and we sat on the floor because the couch felt like it wanted to cry. I told her what the messages said in the same tone I use to report vitals, steady and boring on purpose. She wanted to call Dylan names that would have satisfied a certain corner of my heart. I shook my head. I said I would be seeing a lawyer tomorrow. She squeezed my hand in the way nurses do when they have no medication that will touch the pain and still want to help. At dawn, I wrote a list on a notepad Nina kept near her door. Call family lawyer, call school counselor, call pediatrician, file illegal lockout report with housing office, file for temporary custody and exclusive possession, freeze joint account beyond threshold, forward new address to post office, change Eli doctor records to new address, document everything. I showered in water that never quite chose a temperature, and Eli hummed to himself while drawing a bus across the bottom of Nina's grocery list. He wrote the word home in letters that still looked a little drunk. I kissed the back of his head and tasted sleep and sugar and the stubborn courage of children. Kayla met me at 9. Her office held 2 chairs, 2 ferns, and the hum of a laser printer that waits to be asked for something important. Kayla wears competence like a jacket she inherited and refused to give back. She listened with her hands still and asked me to stick to verbs and dates. I told her about the doorbell clip, the brass shine on the lock, the locksmith's quick hands, the message about the plan, the demand that I accept living under her roof and under her rules. I told her about the chain gate suddenly smooth, about the smell of oil, about the meter in my chest that measures when something is not right. She asked whether Dylan had access to our bank account. He did. She asked if Marion or Victor had ever shown me a deed or a lease. They had not, but I had paid the gas and the electric for 3 years, and the insurance had started sending notices with my name because I handled claims for a burst pipe the winter the ceiling felt like a tired elbow. Kayla nodded and said this was not a question about culture or preference or respect. It was a question about coercive control and housing rights and the stability of a child. She said we would move quickly and quietly. She drew a map that looked like a series of doors and the right keys for each. By noon, we had filed for a temporary order granting me exclusive possession of the marital residence pending a full hearing, a temporary custody schedule where Eli sleeps in his own bed during school nights, and a temporary order for child support based on Dylan's last 2 years of pay. We filed a motion to restrain any unusual withdrawals from our joint account, with automatic notices to me and to the court for any amount above a threshold that can keep groceries honest but casinos hungry. We sent a preservation letter to Marion and Victor regarding all door lock changes, camera footage, and communications about plans to remove me or my property. We included a line that told them in sturdy language that any documents or devices that go missing after this notice will invite consequences they will not enjoy. Kayla asked if I had access to the doorbell camera from outside the house. I did. I had set up redundant login because my work taught me that redundant is the kindest adjective in a crisis. We watched the clip together, Marion pointing, Dylan shrugging, the locksmith unscrewing something he did not expect to have to defend later. Kayla smiled the way a soldier might smile at a bridge that has held 1,000 mornings. She said the clip would help a judge understand without us needing to perform anything. She asked whether Marion had sent me any messages about standards and heritage and the role of elders in this family. I forwarded the text to her email. She read it and sighed like a person who has seen the same script printed on different letterhead too many times. I drove to the school to catch Ms. Patel, the counselor, between a reading group and a meeting with a parent about a science fair volcano that wanted to be a flood. I told her what had happened and asked for a letter documenting any changes in Eli behavior, any anxiety, any attendance wobble tied to this mess. She nodded with the slow care of a person who knows that paper can hold children up when adults fall down. She promised a note by afternoon and asked if she could do anything else. I said, just notice. Notice is an underrated form of love. I took Eli to the pediatrician to document stress and to make sure nothing in his small body was paying for the weather in the big people house. Dr. Kim wrote a note about sleep and stomach aches and stability. She looked me in the eye and told me the simple truth that has saved me more than once. Routine is medicine when chaos forgets its manners. The housing office called back about the illegal lockout report. The clerk had the cheerful voice of someone who enjoys telling rules to people who do not expect to hear them. She said a notice would be served, that I should not attempt entry without police presence until then, and that the office would schedule a hearing if the homeowners believed they could order me out without a court. I thanked her and sent Kayla the case number. I drove back to our block to meet Officer Reyes for a civil standby so I could collect essentials for Eli and a few of my own things. Dylan opened the door with a performance-ready face and a second-hand tie incorrectly knotted. Marion stood behind him with her mouth set in a line she probably practiced as a girl in mirrors. Victor stayed farther back like a man who prefers to run the script while someone else says the lines. Reyes set the tone with a simple instruction about how this would go. We would be quick. We would be polite. We would be finished before anyone ran out of dignity. I packed a bag for Eli and took photos of the rooms in case someone later claimed that I had stolen curtains or sanity. When I reached for my file box in the hall closet, Marion reached too and told me those papers were family. Reyes raised an eyebrow with the kind of authority that ends a conversation. I placed the file box on top of a bag of little shoes and walked past pictures of people who like to look like winners in churches. Dylan followed me into the kitchen and told me we could avoid all of this if I would agree to a reasonable timetable for moving into his parents' place so his mother could help run the house. I told him that a mother who helps does not change locks on her daughter-in-law after texting about heritage. I told him we would let the judge decide what words like reasonable and help meant in a county where laws have chores too. Nina watched Eli that night so I could sleep for 4 hours without a small voice asking if the house would behave. In the morning, Kayla texted that we had a hearing date for the temporary orders and that she wanted to collect any additional evidence. She asked me to check bank alerts. I opened the app and saw a transfer request from Dylan to a new joint account ending in numbers I did not recognize. The name on the account included an initial that did not belong to either of us. Later, a teller answered Kayla's subpoena with a detail that made the room colder. The second signer on that new account was Marion. The bank had allowed it after someone at a branch wrote an internal note saying, "Family consolidation." The note did not change policy. A fraud investigation did. The account froze. The transfer reversed. Kayla smiled without showing teeth. The doorbell camera gave us more than we asked for. At 10 the next morning, Victor arrived with a set of large trash bags and opened the door with a key he kept on a ring that could haul a small boat. He placed my folded clothes into the bags and shook his head like he was performing disappointment for imaginary neighbors. He did not notice the small camera over the arch watching him work. Later, in a voicemail he left on my phone meant for Dylan, he spoke plainly about the plan to clear my things out to make space for real family and about moving my mail to their address so that I would learn how this family runs. He did not realize that voicemail can be a witness if you let it speak. I saved the audio in 3 places and the transcript in 2. I keep receipts because I have learned that confusion has a sweet tooth. I picked Eli up from school and we walked the long way to Nina's apartment. He told me he had lost his book about a train that behaves badly and asked if we could find it tonight. I told him we would look in all the places a book might hide. He asked if the house would let us back in. I told him we were asking helpers whose job it is to make houses behave. He asked if Grandma Marion was a helper. I told him some adults forget what helpers look like when they are scared. He nodded like a foreman approving a beam. Children have a better sense for structure than most mayors. When I opened my phone later, I saw a change of address request filed through the post office website. The request had moved my mail to Marion address 3 towns over. The email confirmation arrived because someone forgot to change my email in their rush. I clicked deny and printed the notice. I called the postal inspector number and filed a report. The voice on the line sounded delighted to have something clear to pursue after a day of mysteries about missing packages and fighting neighbors. She told me to bring the printed notice to my local branch and that they would restore the correct route. She asked if anyone had access to my devices. I told her the truth, not anymore. The next day, Kayla and I walked into court with a folder that had more spine than some buildings. She led with the clip of the locksmith and Marion pointing as if she had been hired by fate to direct the camera to the right spot. She followed with the illegal lockout report and the postal email and the bank records about the attempted transfer to an account with Marion in the name. She laid down Dr. Kim note about sleep and stomach aches and Ms. Patel letter about Eli knew need to keep a backpack zipped, even at recess. She held up the voicemail transcript where Victor talked about real family and how to teach me a lesson. She did not gloat. She did not pose. She let the paper speak like a choir that has rehearsed and knows when to breathe. Dylan Attorney tried one song about duty to parents and tradition, and how a joint household would benefit a child with extended support. The judge listened the way a mountain listens to wind. Then the judge asked for dates and bills, and whose names appeared on the insurance and taxes, since the pipe burst winter. The answers put my name on responsibilities that matter when lights are on and roofs leak. The judge granted me temporary exclusive possession of the house and ordered Dylan to vacate within 24 hours and to deliver a set of keys to my lawyer by close of business. The judge set a schedule where Eli remains in his school and sleeps in his own bed during the week. The judge ordered temporary child support and restrained any unusual withdrawals from joint accounts. The judge told Dylan that tradition without consent is simply control wearing a borrowed suit. I did not cheer. I breathed. Breathing can feel like applause when you have been holding your breath for a week. I called Nina to tell her I would bring Eli to the house after picking up keys from Kayla's office. Nina promised to cook spaghetti and not overthink the sauce. Eli drew a floor plan of his room on the back of a flyer and said he would like his dinosaur to face the window so it could watch weather. He asked if the house would remember him. I told him houses have better memories than people, as long as you treat them with respect. He seemed satisfied with that theology. When we returned to the house the next afternoon, the porch looked like it had just woken up from a nap it did not enjoy. The brass cylinder caught the late light like a coin that had regrets. I used the new key and the door swung without complaint. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and a little shame. My file box sat on the table where I had left it. Eli ran to his room and checked his dinosaur. He petted its head as if the plastic could purr. I walked through each room with my phone camera open and narrated the time and the state of things. I opened the freezer and saw that Marion had thrown away the meals I had labeled for busy nights, as if control tastes better when it eliminates evidence of care. I shut the door, wiped the handle, and began making a list of what needed to be replaced and what could be forgiven. The housing office called to confirm that the illegal lockout complaint had been recorded and that the homeowners had been advised about the statute that frowns on people who think a family dispute is a sufficient reason to change locks. The postal inspector emailed to say the unauthorized change of address had been reversed and that someone at the other address had signed for a piece of mail intended for me. An investigator would follow up. Kayla received a bank packet with the internal note about family consolidation and a memo from the compliance team confirming that the note was not policy. The account remained frozen. I breathed again and felt my shoulders descend the small distance between fight and function. Eli slept in his bed that night like a person who had been carried across a wide river and set down gently on the other side. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of something warm and let the house talk. Houses talk if you listen. The refrigerator muttered its recipe for cold. The heater explained the taste of January. The sink clicked in the throat because the trap wanted attention. I made a list for the plumber and a list for the weekend market and a list for bedtime stories. I texted Kayla to thank her. She replied with a single sentence, "Live the plan and let the plan speak." I wrote that on a sticky note and pressed it to the inside of a cabinet door where only I would see it. Twist likes to arrive right after you start to believe the story has agreed to sit down. A week later, Eli School called to say they could not release his vaccination record because the file had been pulled for review by a family member. The receptionist spoke quietly as if we were discussing a patient with a fever that might turn. She said the file had been checked out by someone listed as grandparent. She said she had made a copy first because habits are contagious, and she had learned that from me. I thanked her and drove over with Kayla letter in my bag. I asked to see the sign-out sheet. Marian's name sat there like a smudge. The office made a new copy for me, and we filed a notice that records for Eli would be released only to me or to Dylan per the schedule, or by court order. I sent a copy to Dr. Kim as well. Control often travels on paper. So does freedom. That afternoon, my neighbor Dana from 3 doors down forwarded me screenshots from the neighborhood chat. Marian had been posting careful stories about a young mother who had abandoned her family responsibilities and left a good house empty because she wanted to live like a teenager with no elders to guide her. Dana circled the timestamps and the tiny avatar that showed a photo Marian took in front of a wreath at church. Dana added one line, "We have your back." I sent the screenshots to Kayla. She said they would matter if someone later tried to claim that public opinion had been neutral. I also sent Dana a photo of Eli Dinosaur keeping watch by the window. She sent back a heart that was not cheesy. Some hearts are made for practical errands. The larger twist landed in a stack of mail that arrived after the Lockout case went official. An insurance renewal notice for the house in my name as the primary contact and payer since the winter of the pipe. A property tax letter that had been diverted 1 year when Marian insisted on handling it and then bounced back to me because my bank had been the one to set up the autopay. A line on a service invoice from 2 summers ago when Victor hired a company to install a fence and billed it to a family account that included funds from my paycheck. The paper did not shout. It simply placed my name beside responsibility in the kind of print that makes judges nod. Kayla added the stack to our folder for the next hearing. She drew a small star next to the insurance letter and said that de facto responsibility can sing louder than a deed when a court wants to protect stability for a child. I wish I could say, Dylan woke from the spell of his parents' rules and came to our porch with an apology shaped like a plan. He did not. He sent long messages about duty and blood and how women without elders become selfish and how my refusal to live under his parents' roof was a betrayal of the vows he imagines we took. He signed one message with a saying Marian likes to quote about sons who honor their fathers. I did not answer the sermons. I answered the logistics. Pick up at 6. Eli has soccer on Thursday. The school book fair ends Friday. Please send the paper he needs to choose one book. When he sent paragraphs about forgiveness, I sent one line about bedtime. When he sent phrases about tradition, I sent the address of the next therapy appointment. The hearing for temporary orders turned into permanent ones, set within a settlement that looked suspiciously like common sense, wrapped in stamps. I remained in the house. Eli remained in his school. Dylan paid support based on the numbers he did not want to talk about publicly. Marion and Victor learned that confession sometimes happens by voicemail when a man speaks too plainly and forgets that technology does not respect family myths. The judge wrote a line into the final orders about third-party interference and the expectation that extended family will not engage in actions designed to disrupt the home. The judge used the phrase coercive control, and I watched Marion's shoulder drop a quarter inch as if the label had added weight she had not prepared to carry in a bright room. After the papers were signed, I took Eli to the diner with the blue booths and the jukebox that has not worked since before he was born. He ordered pancakes the size of steering wheels, and I drank coffee that tasted like tacos if tacos were a color. He said he wanted to put the new schedule on the fridge and draw little boxes for the days he is with his dad and with me. He said he wanted his dinosaur to stand in the middle so it could watch both calendars. I told him that sounded like a good job for a dinosaur. The waitress refilled our cups and said she liked when children take charge of calendars. She said it makes adults behave. I slipped her a bigger tip than I could defend and did not try to defend it. The months that followed did not need narration to make sense. They made sense because sense had been put back in the room. The house learned our footsteps again. The basement tolerated my lists, and the upstairs forgave my habit of leaving a book on the stair when my hands are full. The front garden accepted a few brave herbs under a sun that had learned to be generous again. Eli friends returned to playing soccer in our yard without having to pass a verbal exam about heritage at the gate. Dana stopped by with a pie that had a crust to admire and a hand I could squeeze without breaking anything. The doorbell camera sent clips of delivery drivers pretending to pose like heroes, which is a small kind of joy. Work shifted back into its real scale. I took care of children who taught me again how fast courage can regrow when a nurse tells them what will happen next in simple words. I found a rhythm that did not ask my bones to work overtime. I stopped reading parenting blogs written by people who enjoy scaring strangers and started trusting what I see. Eli sleeps well when dinner is predictable and the next day is not a mystery. Eli laughs more when adults around him settle on the same story and stop changing the ending for sport. Eli grows when the house acts like a house. Marion still sends messages on holidays that sound like a ribbon tied around an instruction. I reply with photos of Eli in a coat, or Eli making a tower, or Eli studying a bug on the patio, as if the bug might list his ancestors on a tiny chart. I do not send long sentences. She does not know what to do with the quiet. Dylan picks Eli up on time and drops him off on time, and sometimes looks at the house like it is a woman who refused to take his last name. That might be true in a way. The house belongs to the people who keep it standing. I am one of them. Eli is learning to be one of them. Dylan is welcome to reapply when he understands the job description. One evening in March, the postal inspector called to say the change of address incident had resulted in a caution placed on Marion box and a notation in her file. The woman on the phone sounded pleased in the way professionals do when a system behaves. She said, "Please do not hesitate to call if any mail goes missing." She said, "Thank you for keeping good records." I made a note to bake cookies for the branch staff, even though I do not bake cookies well. I can follow a recipe like a soldier follows a map. It is enough to get you where you are going. Victor left another voicemail once, clipped and careful now that lawyers have taught him that phones remember. He said he hoped we could move forward as a family. He said things had gotten out of hand. He did not mention the bags he had filled with my clothes. He did not mention the way he likes to use the word family when what he means is obedience. I saved the voicemail and did not return the call. Kayla told me I did not have to narrate my choices to people who had used their voices, like weapons in rooms that should hold sleep. The last twist came not as a blow, but as a letter. Insurance again and taxes again, and a small check from a class action settlement for people whose utility company charged fees they should not have. The check had my name and our old account number and a note about credits applied during the winter of the burst pipe. I realized that large parts of the world had quietly recorded what I had been trying to explain. Responsibility leaves a trail. Care leaves a trail. So does control. The difference is whether the trail leads to a table where a child can eat without asking which adults he needs to please to be allowed dessert. Summer warmed the sidewalk, and the chalk drawings on our steps survived 2 rains in a row. Eli learned to ride a bike on the street behind our house, where traffic acts like a polite guest. He fell twice and cried once, and then did not fall again for a week. He told me his dinosaur liked the new view from the window. I told him the dinosaur had earned it. He asked whether we would ever live with Grandma Marion. I said we would always live where doors let us in. He told me that was a good rule, and I tried not to cry. Things do not end with fireworks if you do them right. They end with small routines that do not wobble. I pay the bills. I change the air filter. I repaint the stair where a moving box took a bite last year. I put 3 sticky notes in a drawer with the words, "I know I will use again." Live the plan and let the plan speak. Protect the child and the rest will learn. Choose paper over theater and the roof will stay. I make soup on Sundays for the week and leave a portion in the freezer marked for a tired future. I fix the dishwasher because learning the difference between a filter and a pump is cheaper than hiring someone to tell you what you already suspect. I choose steady. I choose again. On a night when the air smelled like wet stone, Dana and I sat on the steps and watched Eli and 2 neighbors try to organize a race that made sense to exactly none of them. Dana asked whether I ever felt like I had missed a better story by refusing to stage one. I told her the truth. This is the better story. A house that holds, a child who sleeps, a woman who knows what she is worth and what she will not pay. A plan that looks boring from across the street and golden up close. A porch that learns to be a porch again. A door that opens for the right people without being told twice. When the final hearing closed the last loose end and Kayla slid the stamped order across the table, she nodded once. She told me justice does not always look like a clean victory photo. Sometimes it looks like paperwork that fails to trend because it just makes sense. She told me I had done well by my child. She told me to rest. I walked out of the courthouse into an afternoon that smelled like hot asphalt and a bodega cutting oranges. I stood on the sidewalk and let the light be ordinary. Ordinary felt like a promotion. I will not pretend that anger left. Anger lives nearby like a neighbor with a loud car and a soft heart. But it does not run my kitchen. When it knocks, I let it sit for a minute. Then I hand it a dish towel and tell it to help. Usually it leaves before the counters shine. On the rare nights it stays, I walk the rooms and touch the door frames lightly with my palm, like I am checking the pulse of the house. The house answers with a beat that says we survived and we will do more than survive. Eli draws bus routes that connect our address to every place he believes matters. The library, the park, the school, Nina's apartment, the diner with the blue booths, the house his father found near his parents' neighborhood, where he swears he will live alone and prove something I do not need proved. Eli runs his finger along the lines and explains transfers as if he were running a city. I tell him he is, and that the city he is building is called a life. He asks if we will always live here. I say we will live wherever the roof respects us. He says that is a good rule, and I write it down even though I will not forget it. I keep going. That line means more to me than it used to. It means I keep choosing the next honest task. Make the bed, pack the bag, sign the form, cook the food, call the plumber, hold the child, answer the text with logistics and refuse the bait. Smile at the neighbor who brings gossip to trade and offer her bread instead. Pay the bill. File the receipt. When the house whispers, I listen. When the plan speaks, I let it be the loudest voice in the room. When the night arrives, I let it be a ceiling and not a second courtroom. Once in a while, I dream of the porch, the night I saw the brass shine and the curtain stillness. In the dream, I walk up the steps and place my hand on the door, and it opens. In the dream, Marion stands inside with her hands empty and her eyes soft. She says she is here to help, and then she walks past me out into the street and keeps walking until she becomes the horizon. I wake up and drink water and stand in the kitchen and tell the house a joke about dreams. The house does not laugh. The house understands bodies. It understands work. It understands that morning will come whether people behave or not. Morning is a law. I am not interested in teaching anyone a lesson with a speech. I am interested in teaching my son how to keep promises to himself and to the people he loves. I am interested in teaching him what a boundary feels like when it is built at the right height and painted often enough to remind the eyes where the line is. I am interested in love that looks like clean dishes and a bedtime that arrives on time. If someone wants to call that revenge, they may. I call it repair. Repair is the only song I plan to learn all the verses to. The doorbell camera still records the sidewalk because habit is cheaper than regret. Most days it collects the small life of a block that decided to be friendly. A man with a package that looks like a book. A woman with a cart full of laundry and an expression that says she has seen worse weather than this. A kid who pretends to be a bird and flaps with more sincerity than skill. Sometimes the camera catches Marion walking past on her way from church to visit a friend who lives around the corner. She does not stop. She does not look. I stand inside and feel neither triumph nor pity. I feel the weight of the house in my bones and know that I can carry it. Tonight, Eli will draw a new bus route that connects the porch to the stars. He will ask whether it is allowed to make lines on the sky. I will tell him the rule we made in this house. It is allowed to make any line that leads you home without hurting anyone on the way. He will nod and press hard with his blue crayon in a way that leaves texture. He will sleep, and I will sit at the table and write a list for tomorrow. Wake, breakfast, school, work, market, dinner, homework, bath, bed, breathe. None of those need permission from elders who love control more than children. All of those make a life that holds. This is not a legend, it is a ledger. One entry each day. A balance that moves toward the right edge of the page. A family that remembers its size and holds shape against wind. If you pass our house in the evening, you will see a light in the kitchen and a dinosaur in the window facing weather like a soldier. You will see a boy learning to be a citizen of his own home. You will see a woman washing a pot and letting the water run clear. You will not see the brass shine on the lock anymore. The hardware learned humility. The door opened for the right people. The roof held. The plan spoke. We listened. Autumn will come with its sharp light, and the park across the street will turn the color of toast. We will pull bins from the closet and sort coats that still fit from coats that need a new home. I will write names on tags, and Eli will decide which mittens belong to which hands, as if that were a job that decided the fate of trains. We will stack what we need by the door and carry the rest to the community drop box. On the walk back, Eli will ask if giving things away makes space for good luck. I will tell him it makes space for breath. He will seem satisfied with that trade. On the first school day that truly tastes like fall, we will leave a minute early and catch the bus with the driver who tells jokes that only fourth graders laugh at. Eli will sit near the window and press his palm to the glass and say that the trees look like they are thinking about soup. I will wave from the sidewalk with my thermos and then go home to the quiet that comes when a plan has taken root. The house will speak its morning poem in the old language of machines and stone. I will answer with a list of chores that do not scare me anymore. There will be nights when worry returns like rain that forgets. It is already visited. On those nights, I will phone Nina and we will talk about nothing on purpose until the room remembers how to sit. We will trade recipes and nonsense and the names of nurses who can start an IV in a power outage. We will hang up and I will walk the rooms once, touching door frames and checking locks. Not because I am afraid, but because touch is how you tell a place you belong to it. One afternoon, the school will send a flyer asking for volunteers for the book sale, and I will sign my name before thinking about shifts and laundry. I will stand behind a table covered in paperbacks and help children choose between airplanes and dragons. Eli will pick a book about bridges and tell me it is because bridges know how to hold a line over trouble. I will agree and buy 2 copies, one for our house and one for the classroom, with the wobbly shelf that needs more weight to feel useful.